A young woman is crammed onto a crowded morning bus, racing against time to make it to the most important job interview of her life. Suddenly, the bus jolts hard, and an elderly woman falls painfully to the floor. Everyone looks away, and the driver coldly forces the woman off the bus to avoid trouble. Furious, the young woman decides to step off and help, even though she knows she might lose the opportunity that could change her future. But the next day, a fateful encounter with the old woman's son will send her life in an entirely different direction. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The number 42 bus lurched through morning traffic on Peachtree Street, packed tight with bodies pressed against bodies. Tiana Moore stood near the middle doors, one hand gripping the overhead rail, the other clutching a folder against her chest like it might fly away. 6:47 a.m. The interview was at 8. She'd timed it perfectly. 30 minutes to get there, 20 minutes to find the right floor, 10 minutes in the bathroom to fix her hair and calm her breathing. The old navy suit her father had bought her was a little big for her figure, but she'd ironed it until the creases could cut paper. The bus smelled like coffee, sweat, and someone's over-sweet perfume. Around her, people stared at phones, dozed against windows, or just stared at nothing with that glazed look of people who'd made this trip 1,000 times. Margaret Hayes sat in the priority seating section up front, her purse clutched in her lap. She was maybe 75, white hair pinned back, wearing a coat that had probably been expensive 20 years ago. Her face was tight with pain she was trying to hide, one hand pressed against her hip. Tiana noticed because she always noticed. Her father had taught her that. People look right through folks who are hurting, he'd said once, after a double shift at the warehouse left him barely able to stand. They see, but they don't see. You understand. She'd understood. She'd been 14. The bus driver, white guy, maybe 50, with the hard-set jaw of someone who dealt with too much nonsense every day, barked into his radio about traffic on North Avenue. Nobody looked up. Then the bus hit a pothole. Not just any pothole, one of those crater-sized Atlanta specials that made you wonder if the street department had just given up entirely. The bus jolted hard. Margaret Hayes pitched forward out of her seat. The sound she made when her hip hit the floor wasn't loud, but it cut through everything. A small, sharp gasp that said pain in a way that made Tiana's stomach clench. Margaret lay on the dirty floor, one hand reaching for the pole, the other pressed against her hip. Her face had gone sheet white. "Jesus," someone muttered. Then nothing. People looked. Of course they looked. A few leaned forward, faces showing that brief flash of concern. Then, one by one, they looked away. Earbuds went back in. Phone screens lit up again. A guy in a construction vest pulled his cap lower over his eyes. Tiana's grip tightened on the folder, her interview packet, her resume with the hastily updated skills section, the cover letter she'd rewritten 17 times, everything that was supposed to change her life. She checked her watch, 1 hour and 13 minutes. The bus driver glanced in his mirror, jaw tightening even more. "Ma'am, you need to get up," he called back, voice flat. "I can't have you lying on my floor." Margaret tried to push herself up. Her arm shook. She couldn't do it. "I'm sorry," she said, voice thin. "I just need a moment." "Can't give you a moment. I'm behind schedule." The driver pulled over, not at a bus stop, just at some random curb on a semi-industrial stretch of road. Warehouses, closed storefronts, not a person in sight. "This is your stop, ma'am." Tiana felt something cold spread through her chest. "She's hurt," Tiana called out. "She can't just—" "Company policy." The driver cut her off. "Someone gets hurt on the bus. They get off the bus. I'm not dealing with a lawsuit because someone fell and then claimed I kept driving." "That's insane," Tiana said, moving forward. Around her, people shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. "She's elderly. She's hurt. You can't just dump her on the street. Watch me." The driver opened the front doors. "Ma'am, you need to exit now." Margaret was crying silently, tears running down her face as she tried to crawl toward the door. She couldn't put weight on her hip. Every movement made her breath hitch. Nobody moved. Tiana looked around at the sea of faces. The young guy in the tech company hoodie, scrolling through Reddit. The woman in scrubs, probably a nurse, staring determinedly out of the window. The older black man in work boots, jaw tight, eyes closed like he was trying to convince himself this wasn't happening. She knew that look. It was the look of people who'd learned that getting involved only brought trouble. Her father's face flashed through her mind. David Moore collapsed in a parking lot 3 years ago, clutching his chest. People had walked past him, stepped around him. One person had called 911 at least, but nobody had stopped. Nobody had stayed. By the time the ambulance came, he was gone. Tiana looked at the clock on her phone. 6:52 a.m. She looked at Margaret Hayes trying to drag herself toward the door with dignity she shouldn't have to summon. She looked at the folder in her hands. Junior Data Analyst, Hayes Dynamics. Starting salary $52,000, enough to move out of the apartment with the broken AC, and the landlord who let the hot water cut out for days at a time, enough to stop telling Jordan they couldn't afford new shoes, enough to finally breathe. Her hands were shaking. "Stop the bus," she said. The driver glanced back. "What?" "Stop the bus." Tiana pushed through the crowd toward the front. "I'm getting off." "Suit yourself." The doors were already open. Margaret was halfway down the steps, moving like every inch might kill her. Tiana jumped down onto the curb, folder still pressed to her chest. Behind her, the doors hissed shut. The bus pulled away, diesel smoke hanging in the cold air. Tiana stood on an empty street in an empty part of Atlanta and watched her future drive away without her. Margaret had made it to a bus shelter, just a bench and a plastic roof, and was lowering herself onto the seat with the kind of careful, terrible slowness that meant serious pain. "Ma'am." Tiana kept her distance, kept her hands visible. She knew the instincts people had. "My name is Tiana. Are you okay?" Margaret looked up, and Tiana saw it. That flash of fear, quick and automatic, before shame washed over the older woman's face. Shame at being afraid. Shame at showing it. "I'm sorry," Margaret said, voice shaking. "I didn't mean to. It's okay," Tiana said, even though it wasn't. "I'm just here to help. Can I call someone for you? Do you have a phone?" Margaret fumbled in her purse, hands shaking so badly she could barely grip anything. My son, I can't remember his number. It's in my phone, but I can't." Tiana pulled out her own phone. "Let me call 911. She dialed, got put on hold. The automated system asked her to rate her emergency on a scale of 1 to 10. She pressed 9. 5 minutes of hold music. When someone finally answered, Tiana explained the situation. Elderly woman, injured hip, possible fracture, industrial area, sparse traffic. "We'll send someone when we can," the dispatcher said. "Current wait time is approximately 40 to 50 minutes. 50 minutes? Tiana's voice cracked. "She's hurt. She needs help now." "Ma'am, we're experiencing high call volume. All units are currently assigned. We'll get there as soon as possible." The line went dead. Tiana stared at her phone, opened her rideshare app. No cars available nearby. Estimated wait time, 45 minutes. She tried another app, same thing. The sky was starting to spit rain, cold, nasty drops that felt like ice. Margaret was shivering on the bench, arms wrapped around herself. Tiana took off her suit jacket, her father's jacket, the one she'd been saving for today, and draped it over the older woman's shoulders. "We're going to figure this out," she said, more to herself than to Margaret. "There's another bus stop 3 blocks that way. It's got better shelter, and it's on a busier street. Can you walk that far if I help you?" Margaret nodded, though her face said she wasn't sure. "Okay." Tiana crouched down, careful and slow. "I'm going to help you stand. Just lean on me." It took them almost 20 minutes to cover 3 blocks. Every step, Margaret's breath came in sharp little gasps. Tiana kept one arm around her, supporting most of her weight, moving at a pace that would have made a snail impatient. Tiana's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't look. She already knew what it said. 4 hours before the bus, Tiana's alarm went off at 5 a.m. She killed it before the second beep could wake Jordan. The apartment was dark and cold. The heat had cut out again. Landlord said he'd fix it, same as he'd been saying for 2 months. Tiana pulled on a sweater and padded barefoot across the worn carpet to the kitchen. The kitchen was barely bigger than a closet. Scratched linoleum, cabinets that didn't close right, a fridge that hummed too loud and kept everything just slightly warmer than it should. On the counter, a stack of bills, each one stamped with increasingly urgent red letters. On the fridge, Jordan's straight A report card, held up by a magnet shaped like a popsicle that said, "Cool student." Tiana filled the kettle with water, set it on the stove. While it heated, she went to the single bedroom. Jordan was curled up under 2 blankets and a comforter, clutching Mr. Bear, the stuffed animal their father had won at the county fair when Jordan was 3. The bear was missing an eye and had been sewn back together so many times it looked like Frankenstein's monster. But Jordan wouldn't sleep without it. He looked so small, 10 years old, all knobby elbows and knees, face peaceful in a way it never was when he was awake. Tiana watched him breathe, in and out, safe, warm enough. For now. She went back to the kitchen and made instant coffee with water that wasn't quite boiling because they didn't have time for the kettle to properly heat. She pulled her father's suit from where it hung on the back of the bathroom door, laid it on the couch, and ironed every inch with a precision that was probably excessive but felt necessary. This suit was the only nice thing he'd owned. He'd bought it for Jordan's kindergarten graduation and worn it to exactly 3 other events before the heart attack. It still smelled faintly like his cologne, Old Spice, the cheap kind, and Tiana had cried the first time she'd put it on. She didn't cry anymore, couldn't afford to. She ironed the collar, the cuffs, the front panels until they looked sharp enough to cut. At 6 Jordan stumbled out, rubbing his eyes. "You're already up?" "Big day," Tiana said, forcing brightness into her voice. "Want cereal? We have milk?" "We have milk." She didn't mention it was the last of the milk, or that if this interview didn't work out, she wasn't sure when they'd have milk again. Jordan poured himself a bowl of off-brand Cheerios and sat at the tiny table, feet swinging. He looked at her suit, at her careful makeup, at the folder sitting by the door like a ticking bomb. "This is the important one, right?" he asked. "The tech company?" "Hayes Dynamics," Tiana said. "Yeah." "Dad would be proud." The words hit her sideways. She had to turn away, pretend to be very interested in rinsing out her coffee cup. "Yeah," she managed. "He would." "You're going to get it," Jordan said with the absolute certainty only a 10-year-old could muster. "You're the smartest person I know. They'd be stupid not to hire you." Tiana crossed to him, kissed the top of his head. "Thanks, baby. I'm not a baby. You're my baby." Jordan rolled his eyes but smiled around his cereal. At 6:25, Tiana was dressed, resume folder in hand, standing at the door. "Marcus is going to walk me to school," Jordan said. Marcus was their neighbor, 14, marginally responsible. "And I'll go to Miss Chen's after until you pick me up." "You have your key?" "Yes." "Your homework?" "Yes." "Your charger?" "Tiana." Jordan gave her a look. "I got it. Go. Don't be late." She hugged him one more time, tight enough that he squirmed. Then she walked out into the pre-dawn darkness, down 3 flights of stairs that smelled like cooking and mildew, out to Peachtree Street to catch the number 42. The whole way, her stomach twisted itself into knots. This was it. This was the interview that would change everything. Junior data analyst at a major tech firm. She'd applied to 50 jobs, got 3 callbacks. 2 of those interviews had gone nowhere. One guy had literally told her she seemed too urban for their corporate culture, whatever the hell that meant. Hayes Dynamics was her last shot for the month. Her last shot before she'd have to choose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. She couldn't fail. She wouldn't. The bus pulled up at 6:42, right on schedule. Tiana climbed on, swiped her card, found a spot to stand. She checked her watch. Plenty of time. Then an old woman in a worn coat sat down in the priority seat, and Tiana noticed the way her hand pressed against her hip and the way pain tightened the corners of her eyes. Tiana had a bad feeling. The second bus stop was barely better than the first. At least it had walls on 3 sides and a bench that wasn't held together with rust. Margaret Hayes sat with Tiana's jacket still around her shoulders, shivering despite it. The rain had picked up. Not a downpour, but that persistent Atlanta drizzle that soaked through everything. Tiana tried her phone again. Ride share. Still 45 minutes. Ambulance, no update. Taxi dispatch. "All our cars are busy, honey. Might be an hour." An hour. She checked her email. One new message. Timestamp 7:14 a.m. Subject, interview reminder, Hayes Dynamics. This is a friendly reminder of your interview today at 8 a.m. Please arrive 10 minutes early. We look forward to meeting you. If you need to reschedule, please contact us at least 24 hours in advance. Tiana's throat closed up. 24 hours in advance. She looked at Margaret, who was trying very hard not to cry, and failing. "I'm so sorry," the older woman said, voice barely above a whisper. "You should go. Please. I'll be fine." "You won't be fine," Tiana said flatly. "Your hip might be fractured. You're in shock. It's raining. You need help. And you need to get to wherever you were going." Margaret's eyes were sharp despite the pain. "I saw your face when you looked at your phone. This is important." "So are you." "I'm just an old woman." "No." Tiana's voice came out harder than she meant. "You're not. You're a person who got hurt and nobody helped. I can't." She stopped, throat tight. "My father died alone in a parking lot because nobody stopped. I can't do that. I won't." Margaret's face crumpled. "Oh, sweetheart. It's fine." Tiana wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, smearing her carefully applied makeup. "I'll call Hayes Dynamics. Maybe they'll reschedule." She dialed the number from the email, got a cheerful recorded message about business hours and how important her call was, left a voicemail explaining that she'd had a family emergency. She didn't mention that the family wasn't hers, and asking if they could reschedule. Her hands shook as she hung up. She knew how this worked. Family emergency was code for unreliable. Companies didn't reschedule for people like her. They had 50 other applicants who would show up on time, who wouldn't have emergencies, who wouldn't be complications. Margaret was watching her with this terrible, knowing expression. What was it? What was what? The thing you're missing. Tiana's laugh came out wet. A job interview, tech analyst, would have been really good. Oh my God. Margaret's hand went to her mouth. Oh my God, I've ruined your life. You didn't ruin anything. Tiana sat down next to her on the bench, suddenly exhausted. That bus driver ruined it. The system ruined it. The people who just sat there and did nothing ruined it. She looked at Margaret. You didn't do anything wrong. You got hurt. That's not a crime. It feels like one, Margaret said quietly. Getting old, being in the way, needing help. Tiana thought about her father, working overtime every week, throwing his back out lifting boxes, taking ibuprofen like candy because he couldn't afford to miss a shift. Thought about the way he'd brushed off her concerns, said he was fine, right up until the day his heart just stopped. It shouldn't feel like one, she said. They sat in silence while the rain fell and the minutes ticked by. At 7:52, a rideshare finally showed up. The driver was a young guy, maybe 25, who took one look at Margaret's condition and said, I'm not equipped for medical transport. Sorry. She just needs a ride to the hospital, Tiana said, trying to keep the desperation out of her voice. Please, we've been waiting almost an hour. If something happens to her in my car, I'm liable. Can't do it. Company policy. He was already backing away. You should call an ambulance. We did. He shrugged and drove off. At 8:15, an ambulance finally arrived. The paramedics were efficient and kind, which somehow made everything worse. They loaded Margaret onto a stretcher, checked her vitals, asked questions about pain levels and medical history. You family? One of them asked Tiana. No, I was on the bus when she fell. You staying with her? Tiana looked at Margaret, who was so small under the white blanket, looking every one of her 70-some years. Yeah, Tiana heard herself say, I'm staying. The interview had started 15 minutes ago. Grady Memorial Hospital smelled like antiseptic, floor wax, and human suffering. The emergency room was packed. People in chairs, people leaning against walls, people on gurneys in hallways because there weren't enough rooms. Tiana stood outside the exam room they'd put Margaret in, dripping rainwater on the linoleum. Her father's suit was ruined. The folder was soggy. The papers inside probably illegible. Her phone kept buzzing with notifications she didn't want to look at. A security guard stood nearby, a black man in his 50s with tired eyes. He'd been watching Tiana since they arrived. You with the patient? He asked finally. Yes, no. I was with her when she got hurt. His eyes narrowed. How'd you know her? I don't. She fell on the bus. Nobody helped, so I got off with her. Uh-huh. He pulled out a small notebook. What's your name? Tiana Moore. And you're not related to the patient? No. But you rode with her in the ambulance? Yes. Why? The question hung there, loaded with all kinds of implications. Tiana felt something hot and familiar rise in her chest. Because she was hurt and alone, she said carefully. Because nobody else helped. Because it was the right thing to do. Uh-huh. He wrote something down. You got ID? She pulled out her driver's license with shaking hands. He studied it way longer than necessary, comparing her face to the photo like she might be some kind of criminal mastermind. A nurse came out, White woman, maybe 40, with the exhausted look of someone on hour 10 of a 12-hour shift. She glanced at Tiana, then at the security guard. "She's asking for you," the nurse said to Tiana, the patient, "but I need to verify some things first. You said you were on the bus with her." "Yes." "And you don't know her?" "No." "But you came all the way here?" "Yes." The nurse and the security guard exchanged a look that made Tiana want to scream. "Look," Tiana said, voice tight, "I saw an old woman get hurt. I saw a bus driver dump her on an empty street. I saw a bunch of people pretend it wasn't happening, and I couldn't do that. That's it. That's the whole story." "Okay," the nurse said in that careful voice people used when they weren't quite sure what to make of you. "You can go in, but we need to reach her family. Do you know if she has anyone?" "She mentioned a son. She couldn't remember his number. We found a phone in her purse. We're working on it." Tiana's phone buzzed again. She finally looked. 3 missed calls, 2 voicemails, 1 email. The email was from Hayes Dynamics HR. Subject: interview status, Tiana Moore. "Dear Ms. Moore, we noted your absence from today's scheduled interview. As stated in our interview confirmation, we require 24 hours notice for rescheduling requests. Unfortunately, we will be moving forward with other candidates. We wish you the best in your job search. Sincerely, Hayes Dynamics Human Resources." Tiana read it twice, then a third time. Then she put her phone away and went into the exam room because Margaret Hayes was asking for her. And that was the only thing that mattered right now. Margaret looked even smaller under the hospital blanket. Her face was gray with pain despite whatever they'd given her. An IV snaked into her arm. Monitors beeped softly. "You're still here," Margaret said, voice thick with medication. "Of course I'm still here." "That interview is over." Tiana pulled a chair close to the bed. "Don't worry about it. I've ruined your life." "You really haven't." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I saw your face on that bus, the way you looked at your watch. This was important. This was everything. And You didn't do anything," Tiana said firmly. "You got hurt. That's not a crime. That's not your fault. And yeah, this was important, but so are you. People matter more than jobs." "Do they?" Margaret's laugh was bitter. "I'm 76 years old. I live alone in a house that's too big. My son calls once a week if I'm lucky. I have nothing to give the world. You're young. You have your whole life, and I've stolen part of it. Stop." Tiana took Margaret's hand carefully, mindful of the IV. "My dad used to say that people are only as valuable as the system says they are. He believed that, worked himself to death trying to prove his value, and when he finally collapsed, you know what happened? People stepped over him because he'd stopped being useful." Her voice cracked. "You are not useless. You are not worthless. And you deserved help just as much as anyone else." Margaret squeezed her hand. "What was your father's name?" "David. David Moore. He raised a good daughter. He raised a stubborn daughter." "Same thing," Margaret said, and almost smiled. A doctor came in. South Asian woman, young, moving with the brisk efficiency of someone with 20 other patients to see. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm Dr. Patel. We've got your x-rays back. Your hip is fractured. You're going to need surgery to repair it. I've called orthopedics and they're going to—" She stopped, looking at Tiana. "Are you family?" "No," Tiana and Margaret said in unison. "Then I can't discuss." "She can stay," Margaret interrupted. "Please, she's the only one here." "Doctor." Patel hesitated, then nodded. "The surgery is necessary and time-sensitive. We're trying to reach your emergency contact." "A Daniel Hayes?" "My son," Margaret said. "He's probably in a meeting. He's always in a meeting. We'll keep trying. In the meantime—" Dr. Patel rattled off medical jargon that Tiana tried to follow. Pins, recovery time, physical therapy. When she left, Margaret turned to Tiana. "You should go home. Really, you've done more than enough." "Do you have anyone else coming?" Margaret's silence was answer enough. "Then I'm staying," Tiana said. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jordan. "How'd it go?" Tiana stared at the screen. Typed, "Still in progress. Tell you later." She'd tell him the truth eventually, just not today. Not when he'd been so excited. Not when this was supposed to be the day that changed everything. She looked at Margaret Hayes, who'd fallen asleep despite the pain, and tried not to think about what she'd thrown away. At 3:47 p.m., a man in an expensive suit burst into the emergency room like he owned the place. Tiana was half asleep in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her ruined folder on her lap. She jolted awake at the commotion, raised voices at the nurse's station, someone demanding to know where Margaret Hayes was. "Sir, you need to calm down." "That's my mother. Where is she?" The man was maybe 50, white, salt and pepper hair, with the kind of presence that came from years of being listened to. His suit probably cost more than Tiana made in 3 months. His watch definitely did. A nurse pointed toward their room. The man came down the hallway at a near run. He stopped in the doorway, seeing his mother asleep in the bed, and his face did something complicated. Then he saw Tiana. "Who are you?" Not hostile exactly, just confused. Tiana stood up, suddenly very aware of her wrinkled, stained suit and her ruined makeup. "I'm Tiana. I was on the bus with your mother when she fell." His eyes went to the chair she'd been sleeping in, to the folder on her lap, back to her face. "You stayed. She asked me to. For—" He checked his watch. 7 hours? Give or take. He looked at her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Then Margaret stirred, eyes opening. "Daniel," she said, voice rough. "You came." "Of course I came." He moved to her bedside, took her hand. "Mom, what happened?" Margaret told him. The bus, the pothole, the fall, the driver who'd dumped her on an empty street, the passengers who'd looked away. "And then this young woman got off the bus with me," Margaret finished. "Stayed with me, missed her job interview, stayed anyway." Daniel looked at Tiana again, something shifting in his expression. "You missed a job interview?" Tiana shrugged, trying to look like it didn't matter. "It's fine." "Where was it?" "Doesn't matter now." "Tiana," Margaret said gently. "Tell him." Tiana's mouth felt dry. Hayes Dynamics, junior data analyst position. It was at 8 this morning. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel Hayes stared at her. "You're Tiana Moore." It wasn't a question. "How do you—" "I'm Daniel Hayes," he said. "I'm the CEO of Hayes Dynamics." The world tilted sideways. Tiana's brain tried to process this. The old woman on the bus. The CEO's mother. The interview she'd missed. The son who'd just arrived. "Oh my God," she said faintly. "The interview you missed." Daniel's voice was quiet. "That was with my company. I was supposed to be in that room." Tiana sat down hard in the plastic chair. Margaret was looking between them, something like wonder on her face. "You're the girl from the interview list?" Yes, I was supposed to—" Tiana couldn't finish the sentence. The sheer cosmic absurdity of it all was too much. Daniel pulled out his phone, stepped into the hallway. Tiana heard him talking, sharp and quick. "Linda, yes, I know. Find the file on Tiana Moore. No, don't close it. I don't care what the policy is. Personal exception. Monday, 10 a.m. Confirm it." He came back in, pocketing his phone. "You have a second interview. Monday morning." What? "You missed the first interview because you were helping my mother. That's not a disqualification. That's—" He stopped, something raw in his face. "My mother could have died today, on a street corner, alone, because a system I participate in every day decided she wasn't worth the inconvenience. And you, who had every reason to walk away, didn't." He looked at Margaret, then back at Tiana. "Monday, 10 a.m. Please." Tiana's hands were shaking. I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's a rescheduled interview. You were qualified enough to get the first one. Nothing about that has changed." "Everything has changed," Tiana said, voice cracking. "You know what I did. You know I helped your mother. I can't walk into that office and pretend this is just a normal interview." "Then don't pretend." Daniel's voice was gentle but firm. "Come in. Answer the questions. Show us what you can do. If you're not the right fit, we won't hire you. But you deserved the chance you would have had this morning." Margaret reached out, caught Tiana's hand. "Please, dear, let me give you back what you lost today." Tiana looked at her folder, at the water-stained resume that was supposed to open doors, at Margaret Hayes, alive and getting treatment because Tiana had made a choice, at Daniel Hayes, who was looking at her with something that might have been respect. "Monday," she said weakly. "Monday," he confirmed. 10 a.m. I'll let security know you're coming." Before she left, Margaret pulled her close, whispered in her ear, "Thank you for seeing me, for stopping." Tiana hugged her carefully, mindful of the injuries. "Thank you for asking me to stay." On the bus home, a different line, a different driver, Tiana finally let herself cry. The apartment was dark when Tiana got home at 6:47 p.m. Jordan was at Miss Chen's. Tiana had called to say she'd be late, invented a story about the interview running long and then meeting some people afterward. She'd tell him the truth later, when she had the energy, when it felt real. Right now, she just wanted to collapse. She opened the door to find the electricity was out. "Of course," she muttered, fumbling for the candles they kept under the sink. The power bill, the one with the red stamp, the one that had said final notice in letters that seemed to scream. She'd been planning to pay it with the signing bonus from Hayes Dynamics, from the job she was supposed to get today. Instead, she lit 3 candles and sat on the couch in the flickering light, staring at nothing. The apartment felt different in the darkness, smaller somehow. The walls seemed to press in. She could hear the neighbors through the thin walls. The Martinez family upstairs arguing about something. A baby crying 2 doors down. Someone's TV playing too loud. This was her life. This cramped, dark apartment with broken heat and spotty electricity. This was what she'd been trying so desperately to escape. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, then saw the notification. Email from Hayes Dynamics. Her heart stopped. She opened it with shaking hands. Subject: Interview rescheduling. Tiana Moore. Dear Ms. Moore, we understand you experienced an emergency situation today that prevented you from attending your scheduled interview. We would like to offer you the opportunity to reschedule. Please confirm your availability for Monday, November 20th at 10 a.m. We look forward to meeting with you. Best regards, Linda Cooper, Senior HR Manager. Hayes Dynamics. Tiana read it 3 times, then a 4th. Then she put her phone down and put her head in her hands. She wanted to be happy. She wanted to be excited. Instead, she felt exhausted and terrified, and like she'd been given something she didn't deserve. What if they only rescheduled because of who Margaret was? What if they hired her out of pity? What if she walked in there and everyone knew she was the girl who had helped the CEO's mother, and that became her entire identity? She didn't want to be a charity case. She wanted to be chosen for her skills, for her work, for who she was, not for what she'd done on a bus. But beggars couldn't be choosers. That's what her father used to say when he came home bone-tired from a shift that paid barely above minimum wage. Beggars can't be choosers, baby girl. You take what you can get, and you make it work. The door opened. Jordan came in, backpack bouncing, Miss Chen waving from the hallway. "Thanks again, Miss Chen," Tiana called out. "Anytime, dear." Jordan was a perfect angel as always. Jordan snorted as Miss Chen left. She says that to everyone. "You're home." He stopped seeing the candles. "Power's out again." "Yeah, I'll call them tomorrow." Jordan dropped his backpack and came to sit next to her on the couch. In the candlelight, his face looked older than 10. He'd been growing up fast these last few years. Too fast. "Did you get it?" His eyes were shining with hope. "Did you get the job?" Tiana looked at her little brother, at the hope on his face, at the way he was practically vibrating with excitement. She thought about lying, about making up some story to buy herself time. But Jordan deserved the truth. He always had. "Interview was rescheduled," she said carefully. "Monday morning." Jordan's face fell. "What? Why?" "There was a situation. A woman got hurt on the bus. She fell and the driver kicked her off. Nobody helped her, so I got off too." "You missed your interview to help someone?" Jordan processed this slowly. "Was she okay?" "She needed surgery, but she's going to be okay. I stayed with her at the hospital until her son came." Jordan nodded, thinking. Then he said, "How hurt was she?" "Fractured hip. She couldn't walk. The driver just dumped her on this empty street in the rain. And nobody helped." Jordan's voice was sharp with the kind of righteous anger only a 10-year-old could muster. What's wrong with people? They were scared, or busy, or they just didn't want to get involved. That's messed up. "Yeah, it is." Jordan was quiet for a moment. Then he crossed the room and hugged her tight, his thin arms wrapping around her waist. Dad would have been proud. Tiana's eyes stung. "Yeah? Yeah. He always said people matter more than stuff. Remember? When Mr. Jenkins from downstairs had that heart attack and Dad carried him down 3 flights of stairs, and he was late to work, and his boss yelled at him." Tiana remembered. Her father had come home that night looking more defeated than she'd ever seen him. "Boss said 1 more late arrival and I'm done," he'd told her mother, who was still alive then. "But what was I supposed to do? Let Jenkins die?" "I remember," Tiana said softly. "So you did what Dad would have done. That means you're gonna be okay." Jordan pulled back, looking at her seriously. Are you scared about Monday? Terrified. Because of the interview or because of what happened? Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Both, Tiana admitted. What if they only rescheduled because they felt bad? What if everyone knows what happened and they look at me differently? Then they're dumb, Jordan said with the absolute confidence of youth. You're the smartest person I know. If they don't see that, it's their loss. You have to say that. You're my brother. I don't have to say anything. I'm saying it because it's true. He grabbed her hand. You're going to kill that interview. You're going to get the job. And we're going to get out of this apartment with the broken everything. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just haven't been paying attention. Tiana threw a balled-up napkin at him. He threw it back. And for a moment, in the candlelight, things felt almost normal. Come on, Tiana said, standing up. Let's see what we can make for dinner. They ended up eating ramen cooked on the camping stove Tiana's dad had bought at a yard sale 5 years ago. The power outage meant they couldn't use the electric stove, and the camping stove was their backup. They sat on the couch by candlelight, Jordan doing homework in the dim light with a flashlight propped up on books. Tiana pretended to look at her phone, but really just stared at that email. Monday, November 20th at 10 a.m. 3 days away, 72 hours to prepare, to worry, to second-guess every decision she'd made today. Stop thinking so hard, Jordan said without looking up from his math homework. I can hear your brain from here. How do you know I'm thinking hard? You get this look, like you're trying to solve the world's problems. Maybe I am. Well, stop. You can't solve everything. He looked up, grinning. That's what you always tell me when I stress about tests. Using my own wisdom against me. Rude. Learned from the best. Later, after Jordan had gone to bed, Tiana sat in the dark and thought about the day, about Margaret's face when she'd hit that floor, about the way every single person on that bus had looked away, about the bus driver's cold indifference. She thought about her father alone in that parking lot, about how long he'd lain there, about whether he'd been conscious, whether he'd seen people passing by, whether he'd understood in those final moments that nobody was coming. The thought made her chest hurt. She pulled out her father's suit. It was ruined, wrinkled beyond repair, stained with rain and mud, and whatever else had been on that street. The fabric was damaged, the seams stressed. She tried to smooth out the wrinkles anyway, running her hands over the jacket like she could will it back to life. It was the last piece of him she had that still felt real. His old tools were in a box somewhere. His clothes had been donated. His cologne bottle was empty. This suit was all that remained. And now it was ruined. She hung it back up anyway, in the bathroom where the moisture from showers might help the wrinkles. It wouldn't work. She knew that, but she had to try. Then she went through her closet looking for something else to wear. The pickings were slim. A black skirt that was a little too big. She'd bought it at Goodwill 2 years ago. A white blouse that was a little too small. A hand-me-down from a friend. A gray cardigan with a button missing. She laid them out carefully on the chair, mentally calculating what she'd need to do. Sew the button back on. Iron the blouse. Maybe find a belt for the skirt so it didn't slip. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hi, Tiana. This is Margaret Hayes. Daniel gave me your number. I hope that's okay. I wanted to thank you again for today. You saved my life. Tiana's throat tightened. She typed back. You don't need to thank me. I'm just glad you're okay. The response came quickly. I need you to know something. Daniel didn't reschedule your interview because of me. He rescheduled it because you were qualified and you had a legitimate emergency. Please don't doubt yourself. You earned that opportunity. How did you know I was doubting myself? Because I would be too. When you're used to having to fight for everything, kindness feels suspicious. But sometimes, dear, kindness is just kindness. Tiana stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, thank you for saying that. See you soon. I'd like to have you and your brother over for dinner when I'm recovered. Would that be okay? That would be really nice. Good. Now go get some sleep. You have an interview to prepare for. Tiana smiled despite everything. She set her phone down and went to check on Jordan one more time. He was sprawled across the bed, Mr. Bear tucked under one arm, his mouth slightly open in sleep. The flashlight was still on, his math homework half finished on the floor where it had fallen. Tiana turned off the flashlight, pulled the blanket up over Jordan's shoulders, and stood there for a moment, watching him sleep. "I'm gonna fix this," she whispered. "I promise." She went back to the living room, pulled out her laptop, and started reviewing her interview materials. The power was out, but she had enough battery for a few hours. She went through her resume, her portfolio, her prepared answers to common interview questions. She researched Hayes Dynamics more thoroughly, their recent projects, their company culture, their stated values. At 11:47 p.m., lying in bed next to Jordan in the too-small bedroom, Tiana stared at the ceiling and thought about choices. The choice to get off the bus, the choice to stay at the hospital, the choice to accept the rescheduled interview instead of walking away with her pride intact. Every choice had a cost. Every choice closed doors while opening others. She thought about Margaret Hayes, probably asleep in a hospital bed right now, hip held together with pins and prayers. Thought about the way nobody on that bus had moved, the way the driver had just wanted the problem gone. She thought about her father, dying alone. About Jordan, asleep next to her, trusting that she'd figure it out. "I'll make it right," she whispered to the darkness. "I promise. Not just for us. For you too, Dad. I'll make you proud." The darkness didn't answer, but somewhere, maybe, her father heard. And maybe that was enough. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made everything feel both possible and terrifying. Tiana woke at 5:30 a.m., gave herself time to prepare without rushing. The power had come back on Sunday afternoon after she'd called the electric company and arranged a payment plan that would eat into her grocery budget for the next 3 months. But at least they had lights. Jordan was already awake when she came into the kitchen, eating cereal and watching her with serious eyes. "Big day," he said. "Big day," she agreed. "You're gonna be amazing." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do, because you're my sister, and you're the smartest person I know, and anyone who doesn't see that is an idiot." Tiana smiled despite her nerves. "Thanks, baby." "Stop calling me that." She kissed the top of his head anyway, making him squirm. At 9:37 a.m., Tiana stood outside the gleaming glass tower of Hayes Dynamics, giving herself time to breathe. The building was all chrome and glass, reflecting the Atlanta skyline back at itself. Through the windows, she could see people moving with purpose, expensive suits, confident strides, the kind of people who belonged in places like this. Tiana looked down at her outfit, the black skirt with the belt she'd added to keep it from slipping, the white blouse that pulled slightly across the shoulders, the gray cardigan with its replaced button that didn't quite match the others. Her shoes were her best pair, black flats she'd bought for her college graduation, but they were scuffed despite her best efforts to polish them. She looked like exactly what she was, someone trying desperately to look like she belonged. Around her, people streamed into the building, a woman in a designer suit carrying a leather briefcase, a man in tech casual, expensive jeans, button-down shirt, sneakers that probably cost more than Tiana's entire outfit. A group of young professionals laughing about something, coffee cups from the expensive place down the street in their hands. Tiana's coffee was from the gas station. It was in a paper cup with a plastic lid, not the trendy reusable cup everyone else seemed to carry. She threw it away before going inside. Didn't want them to see. "You can do this," she muttered to herself. "You got this far. You deserve this. You earned this." Her phone buzzed. "Jordan, you're gonna kill it. Text me after." Tiana smiled despite her nerves. Texted back, "Love you too." Then she squared her shoulders and walked into the building. The lobby was marble and metal, with a massive desk staffed by 2 receptionists who looked like they'd been hired for their bone structure. Behind them, a wall of water cascaded down gray stone, the sound filling the space with an artificial calm that made Tiana's anxiety spike higher. She approached the desk, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I'm here for an interview," Tiana said to the woman at the desk. Tiana Moore, 10 a.m. with Hayes Dynamics. The receptionist, blonde, maybe 30, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, typed something into her computer. Her nails were perfectly manicured, clicking against the keyboard. "ID, please." Tiana handed over her driver's license. The woman studied it, studying Tiana, comparing the two like she was border security checking for contraband. "You'll need a visitor badge. 15th floor, conference room B." She handed over a sticker badge that said, "Visitor" in red letters, and pointed toward the elevators with one perfectly manicured finger. Tiana stuck the badge to her chest and tried not to feel like it was a scarlet letter marking her as someone who didn't belong. The elevator ride up was packed, business people discussing numbers, deadlines, client meetings. Nobody looked at her, or rather, several people did. Quick glances that took in her outfit, her visitor badge, her obvious nervousness, and then looked away like they'd seen something embarrassing. Tiana kept her eyes on the floor numbers as they climbed. 10th floor, 11th, 12th. Her heart was pounding so hard she wondered if the people next to her could hear it. 14th, 15th. The doors opened. The 15th floor was all open-plan offices, glass-walled conference rooms, and the kind of aggressive modernity that screamed, "We're innovative and disruptive." The color scheme was white, gray, and that particular shade of blue that every tech company seemed to use. Motivational quotes were printed on the walls in minimalist fonts. Innovate, disrupt, transform. People looked up as she passed. Their gazes slid over her and away, like water off glass. Conference room B was small, with a table that sat 6 and windows overlooking the city. 3 people were already there, sitting on one side of the table like a panel of judges. Tiana took a breath and walked in. "Ms. Moore, thank you for coming." The woman who spoke stood to shake Tiana's hand. She was maybe late 40s, white, with kind eyes and careful movements. "I'm Linda Cooper, Senior HR Manager. We're so glad you could reschedule." "Thank you for the opportunity," Tiana said, shaking her hand. Linda's grip was warm and firm. The second person was a man in his mid-40s, white, wearing a cardigan over a button-down shirt and khakis. He had glasses perched on his nose and the kind of smug expression Tiana recognized from every group project she'd ever done, where one guy thought he knew better than everyone else. "Clark Miller," he said without standing. "Head of Data Analytics." His handshake, when Tiana reached across the table for it, was limp and perfunctory. His eyes were cold, assessing, finding her lacking before she'd even sat down. The third person was Daniel Hayes. He nodded at Tiana but didn't acknowledge their previous meeting beyond a brief smile. "Mr. Hayes, I'll be observing today." They all sat. Tiana arranged herself carefully, trying to look relaxed when every muscle in her body was tense. Linda opened a folder. "Let's start with you telling us about your background, Ms. Moore. Walk us through your education and experience." Tiana launched into it. She'd practiced this part 100 times in front of the bathroom mirror, in the shower, while making dinner. She knew it cold. "I graduated from Georgia State University with a Bachelor of Science in Data Analytics. I finished with a 3.8 GPA while working part-time to support myself and my younger brother. During school, I completed internships with 2 local nonprofits, helping them optimize their donor management systems and analyze program effectiveness. After graduation, I've been working as a freelance data analyst, building models for small businesses, nonprofits, and a few larger clients who needed project-based work." Clark interrupted. "You said you freelanced. Why weren't you employed full-time?" The question hung there, loaded with implications. "I was taking care of family obligations while building my skill set," Tiana said carefully. "My father passed away 3 years ago, and I became the primary caregiver for my 10-year-old brother. Freelancing gave me the flexibility to be present for him while still working professionally." "I see." Clark made a note in his leather portfolio. The pen made scratching sounds that seemed too loud. "And you felt that qualified you for a role in corporate data analytics?" Tiana kept her voice even. "My freelance work gave me exposure to a wide variety of data problems across different industries. I've built predictive models, optimized databases, created data visualization dashboards, and worked directly with clients to translate technical findings into actionable insights. That's exactly what this role requires." "But corporate environment is different from freelancing," Clark said, leaning back in his chair with his arms crossed. "There's structure, expectations, team dynamics, deadlines that can't be negotiated because little brother has a school event." The condescension in his tone made Tiana's jaw tighten. Linda shifted uncomfortably. "Clark, it's a valid question," he continued. "Some people struggle with that transition, especially people who are used to working independently, setting their own hours, not having to collaborate or take direction." "I'm very comfortable with structure and collaboration," Tiana said, keeping her voice steady, despite the anger building in her chest. "I've managed multiple client projects simultaneously, all with different deadlines and requirements. I've worked with teams remotely and in person. I'm adaptable. I'm a quick learner, and I'm excellent at data analysis, which is why I'm here." "Of course." Clark's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We are very committed to diversity here at Hayes Dynamics. Very committed. In fact, we've been actively trying to diversify our team for the past year. It's important to us." The way he said diversity made Tiana's skin crawl, like it was a box to check, like she was a quota to fill, like her qualifications were secondary to the color of her skin. Linda looked like she wanted to interrupt, but Daniel spoke first. "Ms. Moore," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "walk me through your approach to predictive modeling. Specifically, how do you determine which variables to include, and how do you validate your models?" The question was specific, technical, exactly what she'd been hoping for. It gave her something real to grab onto instead of defending herself against veiled accusations. Tiana answered, explaining her methodology step by step. She talked about data cleaning, feature selection, cross-validation techniques, and how she tested models against holdout datasets to ensure they generalized well. She cited examples from her portfolio, the nonprofit that had increased donor retention by 23% based on her predictive model, the small retail chain that had optimized their inventory based on her demand forecasting. She got into the flow of it, forgetting for a moment where she was. This was what she was good at. This was what she knew. When she finished, there was a brief silence. "That's impressive," Linda said warmly, making notes. "Your approach is sophisticated." "It's textbook," Clark said dismissively, not looking up from his own notes. "Anyone can learn the theory. Anyone can read a few books and memorize the right terms. Practical application is what matters. Real-world problem-solving under pressure." "Then give me a practical problem," Tiana said before she could stop herself. The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. "Right now. I'll solve it." Clark raised an eyebrow. "Confident?" "Capable," Tiana corrected. Clark exchanged a glance with Linda. Linda's expression said, "Please don't." But Clark said, "Watch this." He pulled out his laptop and turned it toward himself, clicking through files. "Fine. We have a data set here. Retail supply chain for one of our clients. 3 years of purchase orders, delivery times, inventory levels, vendor information. The client is experiencing stockouts that are hurting their revenue. Find me the inefficiency and propose a solution. You have 20 minutes. He pushed the laptop across the table toward Tiana. The screen showed a spreadsheet with thousands of rows of data. At first glance, it looked overwhelming. Dates, SKUs, quantities, delivery zones, vendor codes, all jumbled together without apparent organization. But Tiana had seen messy data before. That was half of what data analysis was, taking chaos and finding patterns. She pulled the laptop closer and got to work. First, she cleaned the data, sorted by region, then by product category, then by time period. She pulled it into pivot tables looking for patterns. Which regions had the most stockouts? Which product categories? Were there seasonal trends? The Southeast region stood out immediately. Stockout incidents were 67% higher than any other region. She drilled deeper. Delivery times in the Southeast were inconsistent, ranging from 5 days to 23 days for the same product from the same vendor. That kind of variance suggested a supply chain problem, not a demand problem. She looked at vendor concentration. The Southeast was using one primary vendor for 73% of their inventory. When that vendor had delays, which they did, frequently based on the data, everything cascaded. No backup, no redundancy. She cross-referenced this with seasonal patterns. The Southeast showed massive demand spikes during hurricane season, June through November, as people stocked up on water, batteries, canned goods, essentials. The model they were using didn't account for weather patterns at all. It was purely historical sales data, which meant it couldn't predict crisis-driven demand. She built a quick pivot table showing the correlation between delivery delays and stockout incidents. The relationship was clear. When lead times exceeded 10 days, stockout probability increased by 40%. 15 minutes had passed. She had 5 minutes left. She opened a new sheet and typed up her findings and recommendations, formatting them clearly and concisely. At 19 minutes, she turned the screen around. Your lead time variance is highest in the Southeast region, specifically around shipping hubs in Georgia and Alabama, she said, meeting Clark's eyes. The root cause isn't demand fluctuation, it's your vendor concentration. You're using a single supplier for 73% of that region's inventory. When they have delays, everything cascades. Additionally, your demand forecasting model doesn't account for seasonal weather events. The Southeast sees major spikes during hurricane season, but your model treats these as anomalies instead of predictable patterns. She pulled up her pivot table. See this? When lead times from your primary vendor exceed 10 days, stockout probability jumps by 40%. And here, she clicked to another sheet. Demand spikes during hurricane season average 156% of baseline, but your reorder points don't adjust for it. My recommendation, diversify your supplier base. Establish relationships with at least 2 backup vendors in the Southeast region. Implement a dynamic reorder point system that adjusts for regional risk factors, weather, vendor reliability, seasonal demand patterns. Add weather data as a variable in your forecasting model, and create a vendor performance scorecard that triggers automatic backup orders when primary vendor delivery times exceed threshold. She pushed the laptop back across the table. That alone would cut your stockout incidence by approximately 40% based on the historical data, and probably more once you account for the weather patterns your current model is missing. Dead silence. Linda was smiling, her eyes bright. Daniel was nodding slowly, a small smile playing at his lips. Clark's face had gone carefully neutral, the kind of blank expression people used when they'd been proven wrong and didn't want to admit it. "Lucky guess," he said finally. "It wasn't a guess," Tiana said evenly. "It's data analysis, pattern recognition, root cause identification, which is what you'd be hiring me to do." "The model you're criticizing was built by our senior team," Clark said, his voice cooling several degrees. "Including me. You're saying we missed something obvious?" "I'm saying there's always room for improvement," Tiana said carefully. "I'm not criticizing the work. I'm looking at the data with fresh eyes and seeing a variable that could be added." "Fresh eyes," Clark repeated. "Is that what we're calling inexperience now?" "Clark," Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "That's enough." Clark sat back, jaw tight. The interview continued for another 30 minutes. Linda asked about Tiana's experience with specific software tools, SQL, Python, R, Tableau. Tiana answered each one, sometimes demonstrating knowledge on Clark's laptop when he demanded proof. Daniel asked thoughtful questions about her problem-solving approach, her experience working with non-technical stakeholders, her career goals. His questions felt genuine, like he actually cared about the answers. Clark's questions all had edges. How do you handle criticism? Can you work with people who have more experience than you? What would you do if a senior team member disagreed with your analysis? Every question was a test she hadn't studied for. Every answer felt like it could be the wrong one. By the time Linda finally said, "I think we have everything we need," Tiana felt like she'd run a marathon. "We'll be in touch by Friday," Linda said, walking Tiana to the elevator. "You did really well, seriously. That analysis you did. I've been saying we need to look at vendor concentration for months." "Thank you," Tiana said. In the elevator alone, Tiana let out a breath she'd been holding for 2 hours. Her hands were shaking. Her blouse was damp with sweat under the cardigan. Her mind was replaying every answer, every response, looking for the places she'd failed. It's textbook. Lucky guess. Fresh eyes. The way Clark had looked at her like she was something distasteful he'd found on his shoe. The way he'd said diversity like it was a dirty word. But Daniel had intervened. Linda had been supportive. She'd solved that problem in 20 minutes. She'd done well. She knew she'd done well, so why did she feel like she'd failed? The elevator doors opened. Tiana walked through the marble lobby, past the beautiful receptionists and the waterfall wall, out into the November sunshine. Her phone buzzed immediately. Jordan. "Well?" She didn't know how to answer. The interview had been good. She'd been good. But there was something in Clark's eyes and the way he'd looked at her that told her it might not matter. She texted back, "Went okay. Tell you more later." Then she walked to the bus stop and tried to decide if she'd just won or lost. 3 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, Tiana got the call. She was at the grocery store trying to decide if she could afford the name brand peanut butter or if they could get by with the store brand again when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Spam calls were constant, but something made her swipe to accept. "Is this Tiana Moore?" "Yes." "This is Linda Cooper from Hayes Dynamics. Do you have a moment?" Tiana's heart stopped. She abandoned her cart right there in the middle of the aisle and walked quickly toward the front of the store, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, I have a moment. We'd like to offer you the position. Linda's voice was warm, genuinely happy. Junior data analyst, starting salary $52,000, full benefits package starting after your 90-day probation period. Can you start Monday? Tiana stopped walking. A woman with a cart full of groceries had to swerve around her, muttering something annoyed, but Tiana didn't care. Are you serious? Completely serious. We were very impressed with your interview, especially your analysis of the supply chain problem. You showed exactly the kind of thinking we need on our team. Yes, I can start Monday. Thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome to Hayes Dynamics, Tiana. I'll send over the offer letter and new hire paperwork this afternoon. Congratulations. Tiana hung up and stood in the front of the grocery store and cried. Right there in public, tears streaming down her face while shoppers moved around her and a cashier watched with concern. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. She left without buying anything. Ran outside and called Jordan, who was at Miss Chen's after school. I got it, she said the second he answered. Jordan, I got the job. His whoop of joy was so loud she had to hold the phone away from her ear. In the background, she heard Miss Chen asking what happened and Jordan shouting, "My sister got the job, the big job." That night, she took Jordan out for pizza, real pizza from the good place. Not frozen, not delivery from the cheap spot. They sat in a booth, and Jordan ordered 2 slices and breadsticks and a soda, and Tiana didn't say no to any of it. I knew it, Jordan said around a mouthful of pepperoni. I told you. You did. So we can stay in the apartment. We can pay the bills on time. Maybe even save a little. Can we get Netflix? Don't push it. But she was smiling. For the first time in 3 years, she was genuinely, unguardedly smiling about the future. They weren't going to be rich. $52,000 wasn't wealthy by any stretch, but it was stable. It was enough. It was a start. What about new shoes? Jordan asked, looking down at his sneakers that were a size too small and held together with duct tape in 2 places. New shoes, Tiana agreed. And maybe we can look at getting you into that robotics club you wanted to join. Jordan's face lit up. Really? Really? If we budget right, if I'm careful. You're always careful. Well, now I can be careful with a little more money. They clinked their soda cups together like champagne glasses. Monday morning, Tiana showed up at Hayes Dynamics at 8:45 a.m. She wore the same outfit from her interview, it was still her best, and carried a bag lunch she'd packed the night before. Turkey sandwich, apple, bag of chips. The same lunch she'd eaten through college. Linda met her in the lobby with a genuine smile. Welcome. Let me get you set up. The tour was overwhelming. Conference rooms named after tech pioneers. Turing, Lovelace, Hopper, Gates, a kitchen with 3 espresso machines, a fancy tea station, and a fridge full of LaCroix and kombucha, an office gym with treadmills and weights and yoga mats, a meditation room with ambient lighting and sound machines that played rain and ocean waves. We believe in work-life balance, Linda said, showing her the meditation room. Employees can use this space whenever they need to decompress. Tiana thought about the camping stove she cooked ramen on and said nothing. And here's the analytics department, Linda said, pushing through a glass door into an open floor plan. The space was huge, maybe 40 desks arranged in clusters, each with dual monitors and expensive ergonomic chairs. Everything was white and chrome and that ubiquitous tech company blue. People looked up as Linda brought her over, faces curious and mostly neutral. Everyone, this is Tiana Moore, our new junior data analyst. Tiana, this is the team. Linda rattled off names. Tom, white guy, maybe 30, with a beard and thick-framed glasses. Emma, white woman, late 20s, blonde hair in a high ponytail. Bradley, white guy, early 30s, wearing a polo shirt and khakis. Mike, Jennifer, David, Rachel, all white, all polite, all giving her the kind of smile you give someone you don't really see. And then, Sophia Ramirez, senior data scientist. Sophia, Tiana will be sitting next to you. Sophia looked up from her computer and smiled, and it was different from the other smiles. It was genuine. It reached her eyes. She was maybe 35, Latina, with tired eyes that said she understood things without them being spoken. "Hey," Sophia said, standing to shake Tiana's hand. "Welcome to the team. I've heard good things." "Thanks," Tiana said, relief washing through her. At least one person seemed normal. "Sophia will be your team lead for the first few weeks," Linda said. "She'll get you set up and oriented. Clark's in meetings all morning, but he'll check in with you this afternoon." Clark. Tiana's stomach tightened at the name. After Linda left, Sophia leaned over. "Ignore Clark when he's being an ass. It's not personal. He's like that with everyone." "Is he?" Tiana asked carefully. Sophia's expression said she knew exactly what Tiana meant. "He's worse with some people than others, but he's got seniority, and Daniel trusts his work. So," she shrugged, "we deal with it. Come on, I'll show you how to log into everything." The first week was death by training modules, password protocols, 8 characters minimum, 1 capital letter, 1 number, 1 special character, change it every 90 days. Software tutorials, how to access the company database, how to submit requests to IT, how to file expense reports. Compliance videos about harassment that felt deeply ironic given how she'd been treated in her interview. Tiana took notes furiously, determined to prove she belonged. Nobody spoke to her unless they had to. Tom, who sat 2 desks over, had full conversations with Emma about their weekend plans. Some hiking trip, some brewery they wanted to try, without once acknowledging Tiana's existence, even though she was right there. Bradley asked to borrow her stapler without saying hello, without making eye contact, like she was a piece of furniture that happened to have office supplies. Even the simple good morning felt like it took effort from people. They'd say it, but quickly, while already turning away. Only Sophia treated her like a person. "They're not used to change," Sophia said during lunch in the break room. The break room had a wall of windows overlooking the city, a coffee bar with 5 different brewing methods, and a full fridge of free snacks. Tiana had brought her turkey sandwich from home. "This team's been pretty static for 3 years. You're the first new hire in 18 months. "They act like I'm invisible," Tiana said, unwrapping her sandwich. "They act like everyone new is invisible until they prove themselves." Sophia opened her own lunch, leftovers in Tupperware that smelled amazing. "With you, it's probably—" Sophia paused, choosing words carefully. "It's probably a little worse. Because I'm black." "I wasn't going to say it, but it's true." Sophia sighed, stirring her rice and beans. "Yeah, it's true. Welcome to corporate America, where we talk about diversity in meetings and practice exclusion in hallways." "Great," Tiana muttered. "It gets better," Sophia said. "Or at least, you get used to it, which is maybe not better, but it's survival." She took a bite of her lunch. "You'll prove yourself. You're good. I can tell. And once you prove yourself, they'll have to acknowledge you." "How long does that take?" Sophia's look said longer for you than for others, but she just said, "Depends on the person." By the end of week 2, Tiana had figured out the dynamics. Clark ran the team with an iron fist disguised as casual collaboration. He had the final say on all projects. He assigned work, reviewed all output, and took credit for successes while blaming individuals for failures. When things went well, it was the team's accomplishment under his leadership. When things went poorly, it was because someone, usually whoever was newest or least senior, had made an error. He gave Tom and Bradley the interesting work, building models, designing algorithms, working with new datasets. Emma got the client-facing stuff, the presentations, the meetings with stakeholders. Sophia, being senior, got the complex modeling and architecture work. Tiana got data cleaning, endless, mind-numbing, soul-crushing data cleaning, taking messy spreadsheets and making them usable, correcting formatting errors, checking for duplicates, standardizing entries, validating formulas. It was work that was necessary but brainless, the kind of work that made her degree feel like a waste of time and money. "Is this all I'm going to do?" she asked Sophia after 2 weeks of it. They were in the break room. Sophia was making elaborate coffee from the espresso machine. Tiana was drinking the free drip coffee because she didn't know how to work the expensive machine and was too embarrassed to ask. "Probably not forever," Sophia said, frothing milk with practiced ease. "But you're new. You get the grunt work until Clark trusts you." "How long does that take?" Sophia's look said longer for you than it took for others. "Just keep your head down," Sophia said. "Do good work. Don't give him any reason to doubt you." "I don't want to just clean data forever. I want to actually analyze it, build models, do the work I was hired for. You will, but this is how it works. Everyone starts at the bottom. Did you? Sophia paused, cup halfway to her lips. I started at the bottom, but I was here 4 months before I got to touch actual analytical work. You'll get there faster, you're good. 4 months. It's not fair. I know, but that's the reality. Tiana went back to her desk and stared at the spreadsheet full of messy vendor data and wanted to scream. Then in week 3 came the big project. Clark called a team meeting. Everyone gathered in one of the glass-walled conference rooms, the one named after Ada Lovelace, and Clark stood at the head of the table with a presentation on the screen behind him. All right, everyone, we've just signed our biggest contract of the year. He clicked to the next slide, which showed a logo for Retail Max, a major southern retail chain. Retail Max is giving us access to 3 years of purchase data, inventory logs, delivery records, sales figures, the works. The contract is worth $2.3 million over 2 years. This is huge for us. People around the table nodded, murmured appreciation. They want us to optimize their supply chain. Clark continued. Cut costs, reduce stockouts, improve delivery times. They're hemorrhaging money on inefficiency, and they need us to find it and fix it. This is high-profile work. If we do this right, we're looking at contract renewals, possible expansion to their other divisions, testimonials that will bring in more clients. He clicked through several more slides showing timelines, deliverables, team assignments. Tom, you'll handle demand forecasting. Emma, vendor analysis and relationship management. Bradley, logistics optimization and routing. Sophia, you're on overall model architecture and integration. He paused, looking at Tiana. Tiana, you'll handle data validation and cleaning. This is a massive data set, probably the biggest you've worked with. We need it clean, standardized, and ready for analysis. That's critical foundation work. Of course that's what she'd get. Happy to help wherever I'm needed, Tiana said, keeping her voice neutral. The work was intense. Long hours, tight deadlines, constant pressure from the client who wanted results yesterday. The team worked late most nights. Clark brought in dinner, fancy stuff from local restaurants, not pizza, and everyone ate in the conference room while working. Tiana threw herself into it. She didn't just clean the data, she studied it. She built her own models on her own time, on her laptop at home after Jordan went to bed, testing hypotheses, looking for patterns, and she found something. It was a Friday night, almost 10 p.m. Jordan was asleep. Tiana was sitting on the couch with her laptop, going through the demand forecasting data that Tom had compiled, and she noticed something off. Tom's algorithm was solid. It used historical sales data, seasonal trends, promotional calendars. It was sophisticated and well-built, but it was missing something. Tiana cross-referenced the sales data with weather patterns. Retail Max operated primarily in the Southeast, and the Southeast had hurricanes. When she mapped major weather events against sales spikes, the correlation was stark. During hurricane season, June through November, certain product categories saw massive increases. Water, batteries, canned goods, first aid supplies. People stocked up. It was predictable. It happened every year, but Tom's model didn't account for it. It treated the hurricane season spikes as anomalies, outliers to be smoothed out, rather than patterns to be predicted. The error margin was 40 to 5%. That sounded small, but in a supply chain this size, it translated to potential stockouts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Tiana ran the numbers 3 times, checking her work, making sure she wasn't seeing patterns that weren't there. But no, it was real. The model was missing a key variable. She sat back on the couch and stared at her screen. If she brought this up, she'd be questioning Tom's work. Tom, who'd been here 5 years. Tom, who was tight with Clark. Tom, who already treated her like she didn't exist. If she brought this up, she'd be making waves when she was still the newest person on the team. She'd be marking herself as difficult, as a problem. If she didn't bring it up, the model would have a systematic blind spot. Retail Max would experience stockouts they shouldn't have. Hayes Dynamics would lose credibility. Real money was at stake. Her father's voice echoed in her head. Do the right thing, even when it costs you. She'd gotten off a bus because of that voice. Missed an interview. Changed her entire life trajectory. She could do it again. Monday morning, Tiana sent Clark an email. She kept it professional, clinical, data-heavy. She attached her analysis, her charts showing the correlation between weather events and sales spikes, her projections of what could go wrong if they didn't account for it. She CC'd Linda and Daniel because she wasn't stupid. She knew Clark might bury it otherwise. The response was immediate. At 10:47 a.m., Clark appeared at her desk. Conference room, now. Tiana's stomach dropped. She followed him into the same glass-walled room where he'd presented the project. Tom was already there, looking confused and annoyed. Emma and Bradley were there too, watching warily. "You think you found an error," Clark said without preamble, arms crossed. "Not an error exactly," Tiana said carefully. "More like a missing variable that could improve accuracy. Tom's model has been reviewed by me, by Sophia, by our senior team. It's solid." "I know. I'm just saying we could make it better." "You've been here 3 weeks," Clark interrupted, voice hard. "Tom's been doing this for 5 years. You think you know better than him?" "I think the data shows what we tell it to show. And right now, it's showing that we're within acceptable margins." He leaned against the table. "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but questioning senior team members' work isn't how we do things here. It undermines team cohesion. It creates doubt where there shouldn't be any." Tom was watching this with something like satisfaction on his face. "So, you're not going to look at it?" Tiana asked, hearing her voice come out smaller than she wanted. "I've looked. It's not necessary. We're on a tight deadline, and we don't have time to chase down every junior analyst's pet theory." Clark's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let it go, Tiana. Focus on your assigned work. Leave the analysis to the analysts." Tiana left the conference room with her hands shaking. She went to the bathroom, locked herself in a stall, and tried not to cry from frustration. When she came out, Sophia was waiting by the sinks. "I saw your email," Sophia said quietly. "You're right, by the way." "Then why?" "Because Clark doesn't like being wrong, especially not by someone new." "Especially," Sophia stopped. "Especially not by someone who looks like me," Tiana finished. "Yeah. So what do I do?" Sophia's smile was sad. "Same thing I do. Same thing every woman, every person of color in this building does. You document everything. You keep your head down, and you hope that eventually your work speaks louder than their bias." "That's bullshit." "It is," Sophia agreed, "but it's also survival, and sometimes survival is the best we can do." That night, Tiana sent a second email. More detailed, more data, screenshots of her analysis, projections of what could go wrong if they didn't adjust the model, comparison of forecast accuracy with and without the weather variable. She sent it directly to Daniel Hayes. She didn't know if he'd see it, didn't know if he'd care, but she had to try. 2 days later, without fanfare or announcement, the model was revised. The weather variable was added. Tom's forecasts were adjusted to account for seasonal weather events. In the client presentation the following week, Clark presented the revised model as if it had always been the plan. He never mentioned Tiana's analysis, never acknowledged the improvement. When Retail Max praised the accuracy of the forecasts, calling them the most sophisticated analysis we've seen, Clark accepted the credit with humble thanks. Tiana sat in the back of the conference room and wondered how long she could do this. After the presentation, Daniel caught her eye and gave her a small nod. He knew that was something, but it wasn't enough. The trap sprung 4 weeks later. Tiana was at her desk working through a dataset when 2 people from IT showed up. "Tiana Moore," the woman was young, uncomfortable. "We need you to come with us." "Why?" "Just, please come with us." They took her to a small conference room. Clark was there. Linda, someone from corporate security, a white man in his 50s with the flat expression of someone who'd done this too many times. "Ms. Moore," the security guy said, "I'm Robert Chen, head of information security. We've detected a data breach from your account." Tiana's stomach dropped. "What?" 2.5 gigabytes of proprietary data was downloaded to an external drive using your login credentials last Thursday night. That data includes client information, internal models, and confidential financials. "That's impossible. I didn't—" "The logs are clear." He turned a laptop toward her. "Your username, your password, downloaded at 11:47 p.m. Tiana stared at the screen. The log was right there. Her credentials. "But I wasn't here Thursday night. I was home with my brother." "Can anyone verify that?" "He's 10 years old." "Ms. Moore," Linda said gently, "this is serious. Corporate espionage is a criminal offense." "I didn't do this." Tiana's voice cracked. "Why would I? I just started. I need this job. I wouldn't. Clark leaned back in his chair. Data theft is often an inside job. Someone gets hired, gains access, sells information to competitors. He looked at her with something that might have been pity if it wasn't so smug. It's not personal. It's just business. I didn't do this, Tiana repeated, but she could see it on their faces. They'd already decided she was guilty. We're suspending you pending investigation, Robert Chen said. You'll need to surrender your badge and laptop. You're not to access any company systems or contact anyone on your team. We'll be in touch. Tiana left the building at 2:47 p.m., feeling like she'd been gutted. She took the bus home, sat in her apartment, stared at the wall. Jordan came home from school and found her there. Why are you home? Are you sick? Something happened at work, she managed. They think I did something I didn't do. Like what? Stole information. Jordan's eyes went wide. But you didn't? No. Then they'll figure it out, right? They'll fix it. Tiana wanted to believe that, but she'd seen the way they looked at her, the way Clark had smiled. Yeah, she lied. They'll fix it. That night, her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Moore, this is Daniel Hayes. Tiana sat up straighter. Mr. Hayes, I heard about what happened today. I'm looking into it. I didn't do anything. I know, the timeline doesn't make sense. You were logged into a training session Thursday night from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I checked the attendance records. The download happened at 11:47. You can't be in two places at once. Hope flared in Tiana's chest. So you know I didn't do it? I know something's wrong. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? Just you and me. I want you to look at something. I was told not to access company systems. This is a direct request from the CEO. You're covered. The next morning, Tiana stood outside Daniel Hayes' office, palms sweating. His assistant waved her in. Daniel's office was corner suite, floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture. He was at his desk, laptop open. Thank you for coming. Sit. Tiana sat. I'm giving you temporary access to our network logs. 2 hours. I want you to find out what really happened. He pushed the laptop toward her. You're a data analyst. Analyze. Tiana stared at him. You want me to investigate my own case? I want someone who's motivated to find the truth. That's you. He stood. I'll be in meetings. This office is yours. Door locks from the inside. Take your time. He left. Tiana pulled the laptop closer, hands shaking. She started with the download log. Her username, yes, but the IP address, she traced it. Corporate network. That made sense. But which machine? She cross-referenced the IP with the network map, found the physical location, Clark's office. Her blood ran cold. She dug deeper, found the login attempt history. Her password had been entered wrong twice before succeeding. Someone had been guessing. She checked the timing against her own activity logs, found her access badge record. Thursday night, 6:03 p.m., she'd swiped into the training room. 9:12 p.m., she'd swiped out. In between, her badge had accessed nothing because she'd been in the training room. But her account had been active, logged in from Clark's office. She pulled up the security camera logs, public record within the company for safety audits. Thursday night, 11:39 p.m., Clark Miller had swiped into his office. 11:52 p.m., he'd swiped out. The download had occurred at 11:47 p.m. Tiana sat back, mind racing. Clark had used her credentials to download the data from his own office. He'd framed her. But why? She thought about the supply chain project, the correction she'd made, the way he'd dismissed her, the way he'd looked at her in that suspension meeting. It's not personal, it's just business. But it was personal. She'd made him look bad, questioned his authority, been right when he'd wanted her to be wrong, and he'd decided to eliminate the problem. She took screenshots of everything, compiled it into a file, sent it to Daniel Hayes with a subject line that said simply, "Found it." An hour later, she was called back to the conference room. This time, Clark looked like he'd seen a ghost. Robert Chen had a laptop open, going through the same data Tiana had found. Linda looked shell-shocked. Daniel sat at the head of the table, expression carved from ice. "Mr. Miller," Daniel said quietly, "would you like to explain why you accessed Ms. Moore's account from your office last Thursday night?" Clark's face went through several colors. "I can explain." "Please do." "I was checking her work, making sure she hadn't made any errors. By downloading 2.5 gigabytes of proprietary data, that was accidental. And blaming it on her was accidental too." Silence. Clark's face hardened. You want to know the truth? Fine. She's a diversity hire, a quota to fill. She's been here 2 months and thinks she knows better than people who've been doing this for years. She questioned my work, went around me to you, made me look incompetent in front of the client. I was protecting this team from someone who doesn't belong here. The words hung in the air like poison. Tiana felt like she'd been slapped. But Daniel leaned forward. Ms. Moore belongs here because she's qualified, because she's good at her job, because she caught an error that could have cost us a client. You belong here because I haven't fired you yet. That's about to change. You can't. I can. I am. You're terminated, effective immediately. Robert, escort Mr. Miller out. If he touches a computer or a phone, call the police. Clark stood, face red. This is ridiculous. I've been here 8 years. And you used those 8 years to create a toxic environment and commit corporate sabotage. Get out. Clark left, Robert at his heels. In the silence that followed, Linda said quietly, Ms. Moore, I'm so sorry. We should have... It's fine, Tiana said, though it wasn't. Daniel turned to her. It's not fine, and I'd like to make it right. How would you feel about a promotion? Tiana blinked. I'm sorry. Director of Data Analytics. You'd be taking Clark's position. I know you're early in your career, but you've proven you can handle the work and, more importantly, that you have integrity. He paused. I'd also like you to help me overhaul our hiring and evaluation practices, because clearly we've been getting it wrong. Tiana couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Take some time to think about it, Daniel said, but I hope you'll say yes. Yes, Tiana said immediately. Yes, thank you. Daniel smiled. Thank you for not giving up on us. That night, Tiana told Jordan everything. You're the boss now? He asked, eyes wide. I'm a boss. There are other bosses. But yeah, Jordan tackled her in a hug. Dad would be so proud. Yeah, Tiana whispered. He would be. 14 months after the day she jumped off a bus, Tiana stood at a bus stop in West End, Atlanta, and tried not to cry. The stop had been renovated, new shelter, new benches, new lighting, and on the wall, a bronze plaque, David Moore Memorial Stop in honor of those who stopped to help. Jordan stood next to her, taller now, wearing his middle school uniform. Margaret Hayes was there, walking with a cane but steady. Daniel Hayes, Sophia, who'd become her second in command, and a crowd of maybe 50 people, neighbors, coworkers, students from the Hayes Scholars Program specifically. The scholarship fund Tiana and Margaret had created together. 50 students a year, full ride, targeting kids from underfunded schools. Kids like Jordan, kids like Tiana had been. One of them, a girl named Jasmine, 18, about to start at Georgia Tech, stood at a small podium. I didn't think I'd go to college, Jasmine said, voice shaking slightly. My mom works 3 jobs. My dad's not around. I was going to work at Target after graduation, maybe take community college classes at night. Then I got this scholarship. She looked at Tiana, and someone I'd never met decided I was worth investing in. So I'm here to say thank you, and to say to anyone listening, be the person who stops, be the person who helps, because you never know whose life you might change. The crowd applauded. Tiana stepped up to the podium, Jordan on one side, Margaret on the other. She looked at the plaque with her father's name. My dad died 3 years ago, she started. He collapsed in a parking lot. People saw him. People walked past. One person called 911, but nobody stayed. By the time help arrived, he was gone. Her voice cracked. I used to be angry about that. Angry at those people for not stopping. But now I think they weren't evil. They were scared. Scared of getting involved. Scared of being late. Scared of whatever cost comes with helping. She paused, looking at the crowd. But 14 months ago, I got off a bus because I couldn't walk past someone who needed help. And, yeah, it cost me. It cost me a job interview. It cost me hours of my life. But it also gave me something. It gave me... She looked at Margaret. It gave me perspective. It gave me purpose. And it gave me a reminder that people matter more than schedules. Margaret squeezed her hand. This bus stop is named for my father, but it's not about him. It's about all of us. It's about the choice we make when we see someone fall. Do we keep walking, or do we stop? Do we pretend we didn't see, or do we help? She looked at the Hayes Scholars students. You're here because someone stopped for you. because someone decided you were worth the investment. And I'm asking you to pay it forward. When you see someone who needs help, stop. When you see injustice, speak up. When you see someone being left behind, be the person who turns around. More applause. Tiana stepped back, throat tight. Daniel took the podium. Hayes Dynamics is committing to expand the Hayes Scholars Program to 100 students annually. We're also implementing new policies for our own hiring and workplace culture, guided by Director Moore's recommendations. He looked at Tiana, because she taught us that the people we overlook might be the ones we need most. After the ceremony, people lingered. Students talked to Tiana, asking about her path, her advice. Neighbors thanked her for bringing attention to the area. Jordan ran around with some kids from his school, showing off the plaque with their dad's name. Margaret found Tiana by the new bench. "How are you feeling?" the older woman asked. "Overwhelmed, happy, sad, all of it." "Your father would be proud." "Everyone keeps saying that." "Because it's true." Margaret sat on the bench carefully, patting the spot next to her. "You know what I think about? That morning on the bus. How close I came to being just another person people stepped over. And then you threw away your whole future for a stranger." "I got it back," Tiana said. "Better than I left it." "Not everyone does. You took a massive risk." "Worth it," Margaret smiled. "Come visit me this weekend. I'm making pot roast. You don't have to." "I want to." "You and Jordan, 2 p.m. Don't be late." After everyone left, Tiana stood alone at the bus stop, Jordan waiting patiently by the car. She touched the plaque with her father's name, thought about the circle of things, how her father's death had taught her to stop, how stopping had changed her life, how her life was now changing others. "Did I do okay, Dad?" she whispered. The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the new concrete. Somewhere, a bus pulled away from a stop. Somewhere, someone made the choice to help or to walk away. Tiana hoped they chose help. She hoped they stopped, because the world changed, one stopped moment at a time, one person deciding that someone else's life mattered more than their schedule. One hand reached out when everyone else looked away. She got in the car. Jordan buckled up. "That was cool," he said. "Dad would have loved it." "Yeah," Tiana said, starting the engine. "He would have." They drove home through Atlanta traffic, past bus stops and busy streets, past people rushing and people waiting. And Tiana thought about how easy it would have been to stay on that bus, how close she'd come to just looking away, how grateful she was that she hadn't. Because some choices, no matter what they cost, are always worth making. And some people, no matter how powerless they seem, always deserve to be helped. That was the lesson. That was the point. That was everything.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.